You are listening to a SINspirational interview episode on the Faithful Sinners. Thank you for joining today. My name is Timothy Baker, and we are blessed to have a guest today that's a dear friend, I would say a stunning musician, an aficionado when it comes to running a studio and being a sound engineer, amazing husband. And in addition to all of that, which I think he's very humble about, a Grammy winner. So I'd like to bring you to you guys here with Choose the Future today. Great friend of mine, Craig Adams.
Hey, how
Thank
are
you
you?
for joining.
Yeah. Good to see you. Good to see you. Thanks for having me.
Now, you and I are opposite coasts right now. I'm out on the east. You're in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Now, as far as our friendship, we've known each other for, 48 years?
Almost. I think
That's about
we met.
right.
We met probably in the end of in 81 into 82. That's when we met. Seventh grade.
Yeah, seventh grade, exactly. You were actually the first person I met in that neighborhood, outside of Mike Thomas, who lived across the street from my dad at that time.
That's right. He's our friend who brought us together.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate you taking some time today. And what I am doing with Choose the Future is taking opportunities like this to discuss and explore things throughout your experiences in life that have brought you to where you're at. Along with that, maybe some specific challenges or unique opportunities that may have come up that we share, and then potentially even somebody out there having a similar scenario they're challenged with to give them some guidance.
Right.
So what I would like to do, because I know that you grew up as an adopted child within a home of two other adopted children, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. I was. It was interesting. Is my parents. I found that out. I think probably I might have always knew that even before they told me. But they told me, my mom and my dad told me, and I'll never forget this. It was it's one of those things in life where I think when the big things in life happen, at least in my experience, and maybe some of the other listeners would agree with this, and they've had similar experiences, is that right before the moment occurs, you get notified that you're about to have a life definitive moment. And that happened to me. So I was about, I'm guessing maybe somewhere between 3 and 4 years old. And it was in one of those cold Minnesota winters. And it was at the front door of our house. And my parents were putting on my winter coat. We were all about to go somewhere as a family. And I'll never, I had the coat where they had the mittens attached with the clips, the clip-on gloves or whatever. And they're dressing me and bundling me up. And my mom she kneeled down to me, and as she did this voice or this something told me, this is a very important moment in your life that's about to happen. So like dig in or pay attention or whatever it was. And she kneeled down to me with my father right behind her, and she looked at me and she said, "You're not from us. You're from somewhere else." That's what she said to me. And very sweetly and very frankly and very straightforwardly just said, you're not from us. You didn't come from us. You're not a part of us. But we love you and you're in our family, and basically tried to explain that I come from a different place. So that was my first kind of in your face moment of knowing that. Now, I think I probably sensed it before they ever said that, because I think there is something to DNA, and being connected to people and being able to like look at each other and see a piece of you in somebody else. I never had that. So it's, and also, so like you said, I had an adopted sister, an adopted brother. and then my parents. So there was 5 of us in the household, but I could look at all 4 and know that I was not connected to, like I knew it.
How did that make you feel? Because that was a young age to have that experience.
It made me feel like an individual, very isolated, but um, kind of like I've never had this experience, but I would say like a kid who goes to a new school, no friends, doesn't know anybody, and there's no connection. Yeah, yeah, there you go. So it was like that. It was, there was, as I think about it, it's just that's really what it was. You just knew that you weren't a part of each other. You weren't mad at anybody about that, but you knew that, like, that's just a truth. And there, the bonding, later, as you look at it back, in retrospect or hindsight, you can see it in a different way. But as I put myself back as a little kid, I always felt unconnected, but connected in a different kind of a way. So it was an unusual feeling, to be honest. Um, and yeah, so that's how I would describe it. In those very early years, it was a strange sort of thing, and it took a lot of my life actually to get through a lot of those processes. Because as you know, I mean, I've been through the ringer in a lot of ways in the family situation, which we may get into. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's the truth. Like, I knew my parents were short with dark hair. My brother, my sister, and I were all
Right.
blondes and tall, but yet still different. It wasn't until many years later when I actually met a birth brother where I actually was able to see myself in somebody else. But I could look at my brother and know, like, we're not from the same place, or my sister. Like, I knew it. I knew it in my bone. So, but we all got
Well,
along, to a degree.
now you mentioned, you obviously you've had some experiences of life. But when you mention some specific challenges, maybe in the home of 3 adopted children, what kind of stands out to you as some of those more uh, pinnacle or milestone moments that occurred?
Uh, well, the main thing, the main things that come to mind are the tragedies. So that's not to say there weren't good moments, because there were, but in a hindsight situation, ultimately the definitive things were, um, I lost my sister at a young age because she had a hereditary disease. That's one thing. So she was gone. I had she passed when I was 13. So
And how old was she?
she was 18. So she was
18.
that's the other thing. My siblings were 7 years older and 5 years older. So they had a different bond because,
Right.
they had more time together. For me, there was a big gap. I shared a bedroom with a brother who was 7 years older. That's a big, wide gap. So I grew up a lot faster than a lot of kids would because of sharing a space with somebody 7 years older than me all the time. Um, but the differences were like in the early years, it was family stuff. Sadly, 1973, 74, my brother, who at that time would have been 12 or 13, he started getting into drugs. And ever since then, my family had duress. So I only had like the first 3 or 4 years of my life were what I remember as complete bliss, family bliss. And I'm super grateful for that because some people don't even get that. So at least I had that for 3 or 4 years that I'm really grateful for. But when my brother was 12, so I was 5, that's when kind of all hell started breaking loose, and it never stopped throughout my rest of my life. So My brother was a
Right.
constant state of turmoil for my parents, which in turn caused problems for the whole family. So that was his role in my life, as well as other things. There was good things too, but there was a lot of, heavy duty stuff that came from what he brought to the family. And they put a lot of
Right.
that on his hereditary issues. Like apparently they would say, well, he comes from a family of alcoholism and this and that and whatever. Um, but so we were different. Even though we grew up in the same household, we were very, very different. And then, like I
Did you guys get adopted individually over a course of years?
Yeah, we were all adopted individually through different families through the same agency. So, which was called Catholic Charities in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is right across the street from the cathedral in downtown St. Paul. So they got my
Okay.
brother in the early 60s, my sister in the mid 60s, and me in the late 60s. So that's how they got us. And uh,
Were you a baby when you were adopted?
no, I was in foster care for well, I guess so. If you're within the first 2 years, you're considered a baby, right? I'm not sure when does it become a toddler from a baby to a toddler. But I was in foster care for a while, and then then I got brought into the home. So, and I actually have
Okay.
some recollections of that experience as well. But yeah, so anyways, those things, they all shaped me. I'm not trying to paint a story that's all negative, folks. There was some beautiful aspects, um, that I experienced that still touch me to this day that I'm so grateful for. But also, when I share this stuff, it's not a woe is me situation. It just is what it was.
Right.
That's what it was. And I didn't ask for that. Um, but
I think you make a good point. Say it's not a woe is me moment. It's the difference is that you worked through it and beyond it, whereas it is a woe is me moment when you get stuck in it and never progress. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that.
yeah. Well, this is where I can look at some of the hardships, and I learned. Well, they got turned into, or I don't know if I consciously chose to do this or it just was my nature, but you turn those negative situations into something good. Now, one of those examples would be by the time I was in the third grade, that's when my brother first went into his first round of treatment at St. Mary's. And so when he went into treatment, so he must have been 14 at the time, so that would have put me at 7 years old. When he went into
Yeah.
treatment,
Yeah.
the family went into treatment. So the family would have to go as a whole family because he's away at this place, I don't want to say locked in, but he's at a place away and the family goes there. It was 2 days a week. So I'd get pulled out of school 2 days a week and have to early and have to go over to Minneapolis and go hang out with all these, drugged out teenagers and their families and sit around in these groups of like
Oh my
20
God.
people in a circle and have to take part and listen to everybody share their experiences and their hardships and their this and that. And I'm 7 and I'm being told I have to speak
Wow.
and I have to ask questions and I have to be engaged. And so I was, that's a lot for a little kid, but I took to it. So I grew up, like I was saying, a lot faster than most people because of that. And
Hmm.
also too, like with substances and things of that nature, meaning nicotine or pot or alcohol. When my brother started that at 12, he was forcing that on me when I was 5. So, I experienced a lot of heavy stuff early on. But the good thing is that that stuff never had a hold over me in my life like it did on him. You see, so that's a bad situation that was turned into a good situation for me. So, you know what I'm saying? These weird experiences or bad experiences. Well, I ended up converting those into something that helped me in life, whereas he was a slave to his passions or his, you know,
His
vices.
addictions.
Exactly, addictions and all of that. So that's where there were some differences. My sister was kind of just caught in the middle or whatever, but like I said, she passed from a hereditary disease that none of us ever saw coming. Um,
Hmm. So it was a relatively quick situation.
for her, yeah, the crazy is she just started her first month at the University of Duluth College, and she came home for her very first weekend. And I remember, sadly, her and we fought all weekend. And she went back to school that Sunday night, and then following day she dropped dead in the afternoon after right after soccer practice. She in the hallway at school. They did CPR on her and everything, but they couldn't bring her back. So I learned,
Wow.
yeah, I learned very early. I mean, actually, I had a lot of experiences with death long before she passed away. But that was a very big turning point in my life because that was as close to home as it gets. Somebody that you live with, somebody in the family, you know. Like I say, yeah, she was my adopted sister, but she was still my sister. And when she
Right.
passed, when that happened, I was at Mike Thomas's house when they came to get me to bring me home because they knew, you know, she had already passed and they have, where's Craig? Oh, he's over at Mike's band practice, probably using the Strat that you gave me. Um, And my brother came to pick me up. He came over there and just wasn't himself. And I'm like, oh, something's wrong. And
Ah.
and then drove me back to Winslow Court. And when he did, I saw all the cars lining the street and in the cul-de-sac. And I'm like, oh man, something's up. And when I remember walking up the driveway, my dad came out crying, and I'd never seen my father cry in my life. And then he told me that she died. I was like, and that was like that's probably the biggest blow I've ever taken in my life. Was that experience. Uh, you know, and that changed the whole
How,
dynamic of the
how did
family.
I was going to say, how did that impact your brother? With him already, kind of on a.
Never the same. And at that time, he was in a sober phase of his life at that time, and he just cannonballed off the wagon. And we had him in Hazelden within a few months of that for another go around at treatment. So he's never been able to talk about it. Actually, I don't think he's with us anymore. But my brother's always had a thing with that and in death, and I think the way he handles his adoption and all of that sort of stuff. So I've had good experiences and tried to turn them into wins and then try to help him to do the same thing. But he's on his own journey. We're all on our own journey. We all have to deal with the stuff in our own way when we feel like we can, right?
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. So, yeah, that was it. It crushed him, but mostly it crushed my parents, and particularly my mom. So, because that was her, you know, baby girl, her ally, you know, and it wasn't until my mom passed many years later where I found out just how much it crushed her because of her journals and things, you know, that I was able to
Oh,
read.
oh
So,
wow.
yeah, yeah. And this goes right back to when you and I met, because that was September of 1982 when she passed, September 28th. So
Wow.
yeah, it was all heavy, heavy times around then, and yeah, just really wild. But ultimately,
Well, tell me about your parents.
okay, my father grew up in the Depression, a farmer from Wisconsin. My mom,
I did not know that.
right, yeah, just grew up in a farmer, River Falls. That's where he was from, and didn't have electricity
Huh.
till his last year of high school. And so he was a hardcore farmer. And then he went into the Korean War, in the Air Force, and went to Korea, fought in the Korean War. And my mom was a Catholic schoolgirl who grew up in the city. She's first generation American, her father, you know, German immigrants. And my folks grew up very differently, but they grew up both being hardworking and family oriented. So they had that in common. My father ended up getting a job in the city when he came back after the war, and he met my mom at work. And within 3 months of him meeting her, he proposed to her. And
Wow.
they got married in 1956, November the 3rd. They were married for 62 years. And both virgins, both I mean, they're the most beautiful example of human beings. I'll just say beings I've ever known, hands down.
Uh,
When people my father couldn't have children. My mom wanted to have children. My father couldn't reproduce. So something happened to him when he was young that prevented him from being fertile. So
Okay.
adopted. That's why they adopted children. But uh, the gift of people doing something for somebody that's not a part of their blood and bringing you into their life, say you call me mom, you call him dad, and then devoting their whole life to you, giving you, guiding you, nurturing you, helping you, never saying a bad word towards you, never cussing you, always trying to uplift you, every possible beautiful example that you can imagine. That's what they did. So I lucked out, as far as the parents go. So I couldn't have done better. So in that
Yeah,
sense,
that's beautiful. I mean, they were amazing people.
absolutely, absolutely. And so will spend every day of my life aspiring to know that I'll never get as near as close to the goodness that they were. But that's my aim every day, is to try and exude their example in one way or another. So that's what I'm most grateful for
That,
in my life, is what they did for me.
that says a lot, to the parents that are out there, to have a child, have that as their focal point of where they see they've reached a pinnacle of their growth is based on aspiring to what they saw in their parents. That's impressive. There's probably very few parents out there that could actually say that, to be honestly.
Wow. So see, in my mind, I would think that it should be the standard and the norm. I feel that that's what a parent does. I mean, like, you remember, like, when you leave the house, when you move away, and then it's like you have to buy Q-tips, or you have to buy hangers, or you got to buy scissors, or all that stuff that you never even considered. You start to understand what have these people done. But then when you get to the point of, like, they took you on vacations, or they brought you to operas or to the theater, or they helped coach your sports team, or they were there in the stands rooting for you, or they're at your graduation, and I wasn't even at my graduation, but they were, you know. So it's endless, the things that they would do for the kids. And I mean, that's the most beautiful example of thing. Like, I can't, for me, that's the most beautiful example of a human being doing something for another human being. And it makes me, I'm grateful that I got to speak to them and apologize for my ignorances and the bad things I've done. Because I'm sure there were times where you were around and you saw me bickering with my folks, or being a smart ass, or telling them to F off, or this, all that teenage BS that we do. And they just
Yep.
they just took it to a degree. I mean, obviously they'd stand their ground and whatever, but I still, even though I got my forgiveness from them on that stuff, I still, I don't want to say hate myself, but I still feel terrible about, talking back to the gift horse that gave me everything. Like, where,
Hmm.
what kind of fool does something like this? But I just didn't have the capacity to understand at the time those sorts of things, you know.
Right.
Yeah. Like being
No,
disrespectful to my
that's it.
mom or something, it's like, and my dad stepping in or whatever. It's just like, you just don't do that. But, I
Right.
get it.
Back when you and I grew up, that was definitely the case.
Yes.
Today, unfortunately, the household environment is a lot different. Um, and it's a challenge as a parent, I can say that. But I think, to be quite honestly, as a child, it would be a challenge as well, because we all like to have structure and some direction. Um, and when you're in an environment that uh, it's a threat to create too much structure, or be too directive or authoritative, it breaks down the ability for the parent and the child to build a true relationship of growth for that child in the long run. And I think that's why we see a lot of children right now struggling.
Yeah. And they're getting ripped off. So that's what's happening. Everybody's, that's a lose-lose equation. That's not a win-win deal. And so if the parent's not winning, if the kid's not winning, and everybody around them is not winning. So that's a lose-lose-lose equation. That's terrible in my view,
Yeah.
because what could be done is that could be an alchemy situation of the best times, the best
Mhm.
experience. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what it should be, where it's like, oh, we're butting heads, and it's like, well, why? Why? Like, and then I'm trying to help you, but you don't see it that way. And I know it gets more layered and there's more to it, but ultimately, if you do it, I have this thing that I call deathbed priorities. What do I mean by
Hmm.
that? I
Yeah.
catapult myself to my deathbed in the future, and then I look back and think, what would have want to have had happen or done, or wish I would have, how, you know what I mean? And that way it makes me think differently in the moment about what I'm doing now.
That's interesting. I love that.
Yeah, because I don't want to leave the body with unfinished business. That's not what's happening for me in this life. I'm here to complete my incompletions and to make sure that everything is fulfilled to the best of my ability. So to do that,
Okay.
I have to constantly, or not constantly, but I have to now and again reassess and look at what's going on. And by shooting myself to my deathbed, that helps me get my priorities in line. And then also, when I have conversations like that with others, it gets through some of that outside chaos that causes a problem where there's this consternation between people. Because if you were to, most
Mm.
people don't want to bicker and fight and butt heads. So there's something in
Right.
between there that shouldn't be there. So if you can get through that, and sometimes it's with words or actions, but it can be chipped away and removed, like cleaning up, like the car battery, getting the corrosion off. The corrosion's an outside source. It's not from within. It's an outside source. So if you can break through to like, hey, no, 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 no. I'm trying to help you. I'm not trying to hurt you or hinder you. I want you to thrive. So, you know, so anyways,
Mm.
that's a technique that I use to try and help with any kind of things that I'm going through now. How do I want this to end up? And how am I going to feel about it?
Yeah, and you broached the subject of spirituality, and you mentioned your mom growing up as a good Catholic girl.
Yeah.
What was the church environment like for you as you grew up, and where does that hold a place for you at this point?
Well, what's interesting is I can, again, like the same way I had that conversation when they, you know, I knew something big is about to occur, and then they told me, "You're not from us," right? Like, same thing when it came to church. So what I didn't understand, because there's one thing that I've always had in this life, and that is what I would call a direct connection to our creator, source, whatever term you want to put on it, God. So I saw the church as something that stands in between me and God. And I said to my mom, why would I want something in between when I have a direct connection? I don't have any I don't have any lack of communication when it comes to knowing what to do or how to be. And so she would explain that it's a it's kind of a community. It's kind of a way to lean for strength. Like she would talk to me about and we're talking about 5 years old, me, five, around that age.
Okay.
That's what when this conversation was taking place. That it's a
Hmm.
place to basically the community aspects, the drawing strength, leaning on faith, saying prayer, doing ritual type experiences to show your admiration like she basically colored and painted all of the varying scenarios and what you could get from them. So for her, it was like a part of her life. It was probably the most beautiful thing in her life was her faith by far.
Hmm.
Like it, especially after my sister died. So it's like, that's what got her through. So, but for
And
me,
she was Catholic, correct?
full blown, and my father not. My father did not go to church. My father stayed home on Sundays. This is in the early years. So when I say forced, you know what I mean by that. It's like, this is what we do in this family. This is the protocol. We get dressed up and we go on
Yep.
Sundays and we go to church. It's not like there was a gun to my head, but it's like, well, you're doing this. But, that's how I was raised. I of course, was baptized. I, of course, was, um, I don't think I got confirmed, um, but would have to go. I went to what's called CCD classes, during the fall
Yep.
on
Yep.
after school, and so I took part in it up until the age of 12. So at 12, I was
Mhm.
like, I don't want to do this anymore. If that's what you feel, okay. They didn't force me to do it. And well, dad doesn't have to
Huh.
go, all of that stuff. And I know that hurt my mom inside, but she always supported me with what I felt I needed to do, but she was there to offer up guidance and options. So she would always try to direct me in that direction, because for her, her faith was so very important, and her entire family. They're very, very
Hmm.
in the church. Um, so, but I,
Oh, oh,
so I feel connected to God. I'm a believer in God, and I love religion in the sense that religion to me is to help people navigate this world. It's to help them get through the day. And if it helps them get through the day in a good way, and if it helps them get through the day in a way that keeps their head up and makes them want to get up and want to at
mhm.
least harmonize with those around them. Not this again. No,
Yep.
no, 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 no. Harmonize with those
Right.
around them. I support it. I love it, and I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So that's where I'm at with that. And in terms of my connection with God, it's personal to me. It's literally I feel like it's just a direct connection, and I go there in my own way with prayer or questions or in anything like
Right.
anybody would. I lean on that inner kind of innateness of. Now when I was younger, I had a lot stronger sense of knowing. Now, that might be racked up to ignorance. I don't know. But lately, that connection seems to be interfered with. It's not as strong as it was. I feel like there's interference blocking it. There's corrosion, outside corrosion on the antenna. If it, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's how I would describe it. It's not me, and it's not over there. It's not him, them, they, whatever you want to call God, whatever, however you want to terminize. But there's interference in between because the connection's not as strong, and I don't know why. So it's like a bird not knowing when to fly south.
Interesting. That's an interesting perspective. Well, and I think you're in a position where many people, I know I am the same way. My spirituality is a direct connection. The Catholic Church was always something I stayed away from, mostly because I was required to have a connection through someone else in order to have a connection with God. That never made sense. Um, but I was intrigued with the religion structure, and I went to several masses and learn what helped me to understand it better. Um, but I think you're right. Everybody, it's a personal situation. I think that the polarizing of people because of their personal religious perspective or view is absolutely against anything that we should be doing as a human.
Yeah.
We are, as you said, supposed to harmonize with one another, and everybody's entitled to walk their own path. And who's to say who's right or wrong? And for me, I choose to follow the path of Jesus, but that's a personal choice, personal perspective. Doesn't mean anybody else is wrong. We'll all find out in the end game.
Right. And to me, that means you're nice to your neighbor. You might your neighbor's snowed in. You go over and help them move snow. That's to me a form of that. So it does not matter what you're worshiping in that sense. It's, are you acting in this world in a way that's helping and contributing to those around you? That's
Right.
really,
Yeah,
that to me would be, that's Christ in motion, as opposed to blocking your neighbor in. Do you know what I'm saying? That's antichrist. Christ is helping. Can I get the door? Slamming the door in a different scenario. You know what I mean? So that's how I view it. It's like, do you move in that way? Because although you could think Christ, you could think of Christ as, well, it's a man. Well, really, what was in the man? When the body goes away, what's left? So it's really a frequency. It's not the man, it's a frequency. So if you exude that frequency and you do those sorts of things, well, that's where it's at for me.
Well, one of the things that you shared about your mom is, and I know this about your parents collectively, is that they allowed you to explore however you chose to explore. And when you gravitated into music, they supported you as much as possible. And I know that they really appreciated the music. And not necessarily when you were younger, rocking out the louder noises, but just the general skill and automatic abilities that you had. It was amazing to see how they were always there for everything as far as support and giving you guidance and making sure even when I drug you away and made you go to LA. I'm sure that that was a very big hit for them. Um, so let's dive into that a little bit. I had an opportunity because I was in the Navy, leaving boot camp, had some extra cash. Knew my buddy Craig needed to be in LA, wanted to be in LA. So I figured let's use some of this money the government gave me and put it to good use. So tell me a little bit about, how that came about for you, because I know what it was like for me, but where that, whole knock on your door and where that led for you and what that experience is all about.
Well, the music for first of all was like a natural thing in me, and that was always there from the very, very beginning. And so they nurtured it, and they were also musical people themselves. So they saw that. I asked for a guitar. I think my mom said from like the ages of 2, 3 years old, I wanted a guitar. So the first one showed up when I was like 4 or 5. They bought a real one for my brother. So, and then I wasn't allowed to touch that guitar. I was forbidden, but eventually I took it over because he didn't, he was using his lesson money for weed. So, you know, ultimately that guitar became mine. And eventually when I moved to LA, I gave it to a homeless guy. So, anyways, um,
Oh, wow.
yeah. So the musical aspect, because they told me you can never sell this guitar. So I gave it to a guy. And then when they came out the first time to visit me back in '88, and they're like, where's the Yamaha nylon string? And I'm like, well, I gave it to this guy. And they said, well, we told you should never sell that guitar. I said, I know, I didn't sell it. I gave it to him because this was this homeless dude. And he was he was so good on guitar. And I thought, well, if he had this, at least he could make money on the corner. Oh, because I was working at the Guitar Center. He'd come in and play and they'd kick him out. And it's like, this guy's a
Huh.
really good guitar player. So something happened to him. And of course, I found out his story. His wife, he was in a divorce. It ruined his life. And he ended up on the street. And he was from Michigan. And one day I said, well, come with me. And he walked home with me. And I brought him into my place and I gave it to him. And he like cried. And I'm like, here you go, man. Go make money. And I used to
That's
see him all,
awesome.
yeah. So anyways, that's how I got around that. And to this day, I want that thing back. So I never know what happened to it, but hopefully in life, as things come back to us, I dream of getting back that guitar because that's the one that I first played my whole life until yours came around. Um, anyway, so yeah, so they were always supportive of that in that sense. But what led me to California was that in 1976, on one of those family vacations, my parents took the family out to California for the bicentennial. So we went to
Mm.
Disneyland for the bicentennial. So, you get in the car in the station. Well, it wasn't a station wagon, it was a Buick Century. But, we went to the Grand Canyon. We went through New Mexico, the Rocky, just all over Yellowstone. And so when we got back home, I said to my dad, how come we don't live out in vacation land, California, and he laughed. And I knew then in 1976 that the first chance I got, after once I got out of school, I'm going to move to vacation. And
Mm.
that was provided because of you and Brian Waters, because Brian was already out here and he was telling me, dude, you can stay on my couch. I can get you a job. Get out here. Get out here. And then you were like, hey, I'm going to California. If you want to split the driving, I can give you a ride, And I told my parents on a Wednesday that I was moving on Saturday. I said, I'm moving to California on Saturday. Because when you told me, I thought about it for 2 days to think about, do I really want to do this? And I knew back then, it's at that time, it's like, I have to do this. Like, I have to do this now. Inside, something was telling me, don't just do this. And I had $88 in those 3 guitars. And we drove out here. Um, and yeah, so that's really where all of that came from. So I already knew I wanted to be out here, and it had nothing to do with music.
That's interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah, because music would go wherever I go. You know what I mean? It's like it's in me, so it's going to go wherever I go. Music's going to be there. Um, it was because when we came out here in '76, and also we drove the whole PCH, and stayed up in San Francisco. So at San Francisco in '76, I mean LA in '76, San Francisco in '76. that was magical times to be in California, and stay like in each
Yep.
location. In fact, when we were in LA, we had relatives in Redondo Beach. So I stayed for a few days, right off the beach in Redondo Beach in 76. I mean, it was just unbelievable. You could walk down and see whales in the bay. Like, it was just changed my life. And it's like in Minnesota, of course, which can be cool, it does not compare to that. So, and I already
Yeah.
had enough of the plains and the bluffs and the Mississippi. It's like that's cool. But I wanted the mountains and the desert and the ocean and all of that. So
Right.
that's really what it was. It
Well,
was just the geography, the topography, the weather. That's why I wanted to live out here.
hmm,
Yeah, and so you provided that situation for me, and I never looked back. And my parents would come out and visit every year, pretty much every year, and I would go back every year or every other year. Um, and my mom she asked me many times if I would maybe move back or move somewhere closer. And then at one time they were going to get a place in Palm Springs. So, but for whatever reason, they decided against it. But now, because they both, my mom's passed away in 2019, my father in 2021, and I was there at their side for each of them, which
Mm.
that's probably outside of what they gave me in life. The most beautiful thing that I can say, or the thing that I'm most grateful that I can say, is that I was at their side when they left the body. Like, because that was monumental in a way. Like, for those of you who have kids, if you're there for the birth, I can never know what that's like. I don't have children, but I can only imagine how it changes you. Well, I can tell you,
mhm.
if you could be there when people leave the body, it's just as beautiful. It can be. Um,
Yes.
Yeah.
so so I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. I wanted to give back to them everything I possibly could. So even to the point of loading my mom on the gurney and taking her out to the coroner myself and putting her in the van and seeing the van go around the corner. I did all of that. So because that's the best I could do. And with my father, it was a little bit of a different situation, but I took it as far as I could with him. And the other thing is he waited for me. It's a long story. I won't get into it, but it was a very, very beautiful gift that he gave me. So I was able to share his last breath. And then, but that happened inside of a hospital. So I took him as far as to the elevator with the coroner as they took him down. I couldn't take him out to the van or like I did with my mom, but as far as I could give back, I did. Um, Whereas my brother couldn't take any of that. He couldn't handle that. So he's on a different journey. He's got his own things to deal with. Where with me, I take everything head on and look it in the eye and just eat it. Do you know what I mean? And
Yep.
I highly recommend that because there's gifts in these experiences that are just beyond words, you know. And you're doing it for somebody else, even though you're getting something out of it for yourself, your own spirit. It's for them, right?
hmm
But anyways, so anyway, I know you asked me
Well,
about California, but yeah,
well,
so
no, no, no. I mean,
The one thing I know that you'd said to me is that one of the bigger regrets you have is your
leaving home.
yeah,
Yes. Not
leaving home.
now at this age in my life, as I look back at my entire life, and no disrespect to my wife of 23 years, I love her to death. Um, or my other experiences. If
23
you,
years. Congratulations.
thank you. Or if you think of like the friendship I was able to get with some friends of mine out here who I always admired and aspired to and whatnot, varying rock stars and things of that nature. I've had a lot of really cool and beautiful experiences, and I'm really grateful for them. But at this stage, I have not seen a better example of humanity than my parents. I just haven't. And
Hmm.
so to think that I caused any kind of discomfort or sadness or longing or anything at all to the people who gave me everything, that doesn't make me feel good. So I wish I could go back and never cause them even a sliver of discomfort. Like, I would prefer to live my life in their service. And just really, because of what they did for me, that's how I feel. Like, to
Yeah.
literally wait on them hand and foot. Like, and all the times that I go back and visit with them or go back to town, I spend all my time with my parents. Very rarely did I see,
Yeah.
I'd see Steve or a few other of our friends, but I'd spend all my time with my parents. I love hanging out with my parents. And they come out here, and you hung out with my parents many times. And
Yeah.
and I got my in-laws. It's like, my wife and I and my in-laws and my parents would go on vacations together.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, like, I loved hanging out with my parents. They were awesome, awesome beings, like, super cool people, and way older, but they were just
Right.
I just loved them so much, and they were so fun and whatever. So I was never one of those guys who didn't wanna be around my parents. Like, I always wanted to be around my parents. So I
Wow.
wish, in hindsight, because of my respect towards them, that's why I say that. So, no disrespect, like I say, to the people that I've met or known, you know, it's really out of the gratitude of their generosities and their really kinda laying down their life for others. That just makes me go, "Oh, I probably could have done a lot more for them." So, it's
Mhm.
in that way. But I'm okay in the heart.
Well, that's what counts. I mean, they know you loved them.
Oh, oh, yeah. Yeah, we had all of those talks. They know this sort of stuff. I would tell them. That was the other thing when I mentioned deathbed priorities. That made it so I could make sure that there's nothing unsaid. There was nothing unsaid with my parents. We talked about everything as openly as possible, so to prevent any of that. And because my
Huh.
sister passed away, out of the blue,
Right.
surprised us all. That was a situation where one of the fruits of her leaving the body so young was the rest of us who remained, like, let's talk about the stuff. Like, let's not let anything get in between us. Let's, be out in the open about everything, because I could be gone tomorrow. You could be gone later today. We've seen it happen. So,
Right.
in her honor, in some ways, that's why that was one of the things that came out of that. So there was nothing unsaid with my folks.
Gosh, well, you're giving me a challenge.
I highly recommend it, because it's kind of like this. If you know how, like, people like to make those photo montages of somebody after they pass away,
Mhm.
I recommend it to everybody who ever sees this. Do it now while they're alive. If you take the
Huh.
time to make a photo montage of somebody you love who's alive, and you go through that experience of putting music to it and looking at those memories, you will enrich your connection and your relationship, which in turn enriches your spirit, your soul, and theirs, which is going to affect those around you in such a profound way. So I would
Huh.
definitely do that. Don't wait till they're gone to do that. Do it now. And also, it's all the unsaid stuff, all the uncomfortable stuff. Just take it head on and march right through it. It's like your birthright. Don't let the
Well,
outside corrosion prevent you from having a better quality of life. That's what I mean by
right.
that.
Well, now you said taking on life head on. What I'm kind of alluding to is that I guess you must have been in your 30s, might have been 40s, that you decided to track down your actual biological brother. Tell me a little bit about how that came about, and what that experience ultimately unfolded to.
Cool. Yeah. So I would have been in my mid 30s at that time. And so the way that that happened was this goes back to my sister who passed away. When my sister passed away from a hereditary disease that none of us knew about, my mom said, I want to get all of your records opened for both my brother and me to find out
Mm,
if there's anything unknown so this doesn't happen again.
Right.
So when I was 13 years old and found out that, oh, well, it costs me money to do that because you have to go through the courts, you have to do all this stuff. It's all this financial stuff. And
Mhm.
also because I was, you know, I don't know if arrogance the word or what ignorance the word, but whatever the word is, I was like, F that. I don't want to know. If everybody else gets to know their stuff for free and I have to pay, I don't want to know. That was
Mm.
my attitude. Now, I'm glad I
Okay.
did that because I didn't want to live my life as one of those guys going, oh, you have a history of heart disease in your family. You have a history of leukemia in your family, whatever it may be, right? Like, oh, so now I got that rolling around in my head. No,
right.
I take 100% responsibility for my health, and I have nothing in my history but great health. So, on the wood. Um, so I didn't, I said, no, I don't want to know. Well, eventually she wasn't having it. So eventually means 20 years later, she calls me in like 2002
Ah,
and she says, I want you to get I want you to open your court records and I want to know your family history and your health. She said, I don't want to do that. She said, no, I want you to do this. You need to do this. Okay, mom, I'll do this, but I don't want to know what's in it.
hmm.
Don't tell me what's in it. Nope. If there's something in it, I think you're going to know, you need to know, I'm going to tell you. so, so it's like, okay. All right. So because she said so, I did it. After I initiated that process, 5 days later, I go to the post office box to or the post office to go to my P.O. box to get my mail. And there's a letter in there and it says, because you've recently reached out to us for X, Y, and Z, and one of your other two birth brothers has also reached out to us in the past, we call this a match. That's
Hmm.
how I found out I had birth brothers. I didn't ask to know. I just got a letter telling me that I did. And I was like,
Interesting.
this blew me away. Like, what the? So, of course, oh my God, I got two birth brothers. Whoa, I sat on that information. I mean, I told my mom, I told, some of my friends, you and others, like, oh, I got birth brothers. Wow, this is
Mm-hmm.
crazy. My whole life, I never dreamt about siblings. I never fantasized about other family members from where I could have been. All I ever fantasized about was maybe Eddie Van Halen's my dad. That's the only thing I ever dreamed about. Maybe somehow in this world, something like that. Or I come from royalty, you know, something but
Uh,
I never thought who's my mom or who's my dad, like never thought of stuff like that. So, and by the way, I should say that my parents who raised me, my mom and my dad, they always told me from that first, that's something I left out. When they leaned down and said, "You're not from us," they also said, "But if you ever feel like you need to find out who your parents are, we
hmm.
support you." So it was always open dialogue and always supportive, never weird. And every now and
Uh,
again, my mom would ask, Craig, do you feel the need to find your birth mother or something like that? No, mom, I really don't. It just was not in me. So anyways, so I sat on that information for about 2 years before I did anything. And I thought, hey, wait a minute. If one of my birth brothers reached out to the agency they're kind of putting a hand out saying, like if somebody looks for me, I want to be found. Why else would they be reaching out, And so I thought, you know what? Yeah, I'll 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 do this. I'll start this process and I'll reach out. So I contact the agency and I'm like, hey, I thought my birth brother, since he reached out or whatever, he's looking for somebody that, I'm gonna respond. And they're like, oh, okay. So then they start the whole process and it's quite involved and it's, it's another financial deal and all this and that. But after they give you a caseworker and they call me back and they're like, your birth brother doesn't know you exist. And I'm thinking, well, okay. And it's like he just sent in that information so we had our records up to date or whatever. And so I was thinking, oh, so you mean I would be just kind of infiltrating this person's life, just kind of out of the blue. And I thought, well, this kind of changes things. So it's not like somebody's putting a hand out, although that's the way I thought about it. So now I would actually be knocking on somebody's door and going, hey, I'm your brother. And be like, whoa, wait, I have a brother? So I thought, you know what, let me think about this again. And I was like, I'm not going to do this. Well, a day or two later, I was like, screw it. Let's do it. So they start the process. And like a couple days later, or maybe even later the same day, the caseworker calls me back and she goes, I just got off the phone with your brother. Like she calls, they don't give you any information, just, and he's like over the moon. He's so happy. He can't believe that there's somebody else, right? And so if you can imagine, this guy was like 39 at the time. He was living in France. So he lived in a village northwest of Paris called Orgeval. And he grew up in Minnesota, about 100 miles from where you and I did, in a hockey town on the river. And when he turned 18, he joined the military and then was gone. He just moved. So anyway, so you do this whole process, all this stuff. I'll just get through it. I know I've been dragging this out. There's all this back and forth stuff, this non-identifying information. You write a paragraph, you send a photo, you can't have anything identifying on the shirt like, Henry Sibley High School, or, you know what I mean? It's got to be all nondescript. And you go through the agency and also too, they kind of have all these psychology questions for you. Why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do this now? What are you hoping to get out of this? Like they want to make sure that there's, this is big time stuff and they want to make sure your head's in the right place and all this kind of stuff. So, anyways, we write letters to each other. We send photos back and forth. And then he's like, he's like, I'm ready to meet him. Excuse me. I'd like his contact information. I want to get rid of the go-between. And they asked if I was okay with that. And so eventually I was. And then all of a sudden we're in contact with each other, emailing each other and sending each other photos and whatnot. And then it turned out I was going to Scotland at this time for a backpacking trip. And it's like, well, if I'm going to be in Scotland, France is just, kind of a hop, skip, and a jumping away. I might as well go to France and meet my brother. So I met him, Nick, my older brother's name is Nick. And we met, this is where he wanted to meet. We met at the Louvre. And on a Wednesday afternoon. Wow. On a Wednesday afternoon at 3 p.m, we never spoke to each other, only email. And this would have been October 20th or 23rd of 2007. And he wanted to meet at the base of Winged Victory. Winged Victory is that giant statue that's kind of up the stairs in this big hall. There's stairs coming down to it. There's stairs going up to it. The head's been chopped off, big wings, no arms, huge statue. we're going to meet at the base of Wing Victory at 3 p.m. on this Wednesday. And I got my big giant North Face backpack because, you know, I'm backpacking everywhere. And so standing around, I'm waiting. And all of a sudden he comes down behind me and he says my name. And I turn around and he's on a step. All right. See, because there's steps coming down to it. And I'm like at the center of his chest. So you know me, I'm 6'3", right? He's like 6'6", 6'7", giant and big dude. He says my name and we look at each other, and for the first time in my life, I can see myself in another being, which I've never had that experience. We're tripping out on each other's hands and our skin, and we're both just standing there in the Louvre, just like, you know, in a busy section of the Louvre, I might add. And we just start talking and walking around through the Louvre together, and then we leave, and he takes me out to eat, and then he's like, you have to come stay with us. And I'm like, oh, I got a hotel. No. You have to come stay with us. So he's like, you have a niece and a nephew and a sister-in-law. So anyways, I got this whole other family. I mean, it was a beautiful thing. And I stayed with them in the village. And then the next year, he's like, come back. We want you to be godfather to your niece and nephew. So I went back the following year, stayed for a couple weeks in this beautiful village town, and he'd take me all over France. And I got a sister-in-law who's from Latvia. My niece was born in Iceland. My nephew was born in Paris there. So it's an international family. So it was a beautiful thing. And then we talked, well, we have this older birth brother. So my father's listed as unknown. So he thinks we have the same mom and dad. I should say my birth mother, I was her third child by 19. And so that was one of the things I found out by opening up my case file for my mom, is that I don't come from royalty. I am a textbook scenario of a teenage girl who literally said she likes to party in her description. Why can't you raise this child? You know, that was one of the reasons why she couldn't. And I was her third child by 19. So she dropped out of school by the 9th grade. But anyways, he thought we had the same parents. I don't think we have the same father, but I don't know. But I see the similarities, but I also see differences, and I'm guessing it's father. But we also have one older brother. And back then, we were talking about him, and my brother Nick said, well, we'll look for him once you and I get to know each other, then we'll go look for him. We never did that. Still haven't done that. But anyways, that was my experience, you know, and I've had several experiences with him since then, and the family. You know, the kids are growing up now and all of that, but pretty wild.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you haven't, I was going to ask about the other brother. Is there any potential of trying to track him down? Because, you know, as we get older, that window of time becomes less and less.
Yeah, you know, I really have to say there is no pull inside of me for that. You know, I'm not opposed to it if Nick wanted to do that. But I don't know that I would initiate it or not, to be honest, because like I said, I don't feel this pull. If somebody contacted me, that's fine, you know, and maybe I'll change my mind on that. I don't know. But yeah, so I get lots of jokes like, oh, it's Kevin Sorbo, because whoever the brother is, he was born in 1964. I know it's not Kevin Sorbo, but from Minnesota, because, you know, he's from Minnesota as well. And I think that year or something like that. But all I know is that the other brother was born in 1964. So, but if I do, of course, I'll let you know.
I definitely want to know about that for sure. I would love to meet Nick at some point.
Yeah, he was in Germany. He might even still be in Germany. So I kind of lost touch with him over the last maybe year and a half. Through when the outbreak was going on, he wanted me to come stay with him in Germany. So because he moves all over the place. So um, but I didn't go visit him. So there was just the restrictions that they had on travel and the things they wanted you to do. I won't. There's certain things I won't do. So.
Right. Well, I want to I want to respect your time, but I do want to ask a couple of other questions before we wrap up here today, and we may do another follow up and dive deeper into a specific topic or two if you're open to that.
Anytime, of course. You know I love you to death, man.
With all of the things that you have going on in your life at this point, sounds like you have a great marriage. Your wife and you are celebrating. You said 23 years. Um, you are able to do what you passionately love, which is be involved in music in your career. Where would you say you find right now the biggest challenge that you're struggling with, and how is that impacting, I guess, where you feel it keeps you from becoming that best version of yourself?
Well, I would say that it's a lot of people that I know are, I don't want to say struggling, I'll say going through hard times. And I mean a lot of people. And in I'm kind of doing the same thing. I'm going through hard times as well, in the sense of the industry that I've put my heart and soul into. Maybe I never put my heart and soul into the industry. I put it into what I do. But what I do is a part of it. It floats in an industry, and that industry has been dwindling ever since I got into it. So it's not the same as it was, just like the world is not the same as it was when we were younger. And it's so I am at my age, our age, and like a lot of people, I'm in the metamorphosis of what am I going to do to keep sustaining my life? Because the industry that I'm in is getting squished and squeezed and constricted and is not as fruitful as it once was. So diversifying, bobbing and weaving, trying to keep a positive mindset, looking into new things that are beyond my comfort zone, expanding my understandings. That's where I'm at, because I don't want to struggle through life. And I don't want to struggle as time goes on. But as I look at the industry, because what I do is with other people, those other people world. They make records. They get money from record companies and things of this nature. Well, that's all been getting less and less and less and less and less ever since I got into this business. So if I was doing this back when you and I first met in the early 80s, then you're just raking it in because that everything was on fire, just
Right.
fruitful. The radio, the
MTV
gigs,
was, the thing.
everything, yes. And then also, but doing gigs and ticket prices, it really goes into all avenues of life. People who like to go out and spend money on entertainment and enjoy things, it's so expensive for a lot of them. They can't afford to do it. So it's all connected. So I don't think I'm saying anything that sets me aside from others. It's just things are getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and I'm trying to find a way to sail through that. So that's where I'm at. I'm healthy, I'm happy, I'm grateful, I'm lucky, but I don't want to say, here's the thing. If you're fearful of the future, that's like choose the future right now. If you're fearful of it,
Right.
that's anxiety. That literally is the recipe for anxiety. And so, and if you're stuck in the past, that's a recipe for depression. So I am not stuck in the past, but I am looking and worrying about my industry. And that's not a healthy place to be. So I'm dealing with that in my life in the best way that I can. So I'm in the middle of that. So it's
Mm.
not dire times, but it could be in a few years from now. Like, you know what I'm saying? So you got to be ready for that sort
Yeah.
of stuff. So that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at how do I keep navigating? How do we stay above water? How do we keep expanding or growing? And, all of that. So, and keeping a good headspace, right? And trying to
Right.
remain grateful and not be worried and freaked out or any of that sort of stuff. Because we have to enjoy it's when things even when things are tough it's good to enjoy our time in the body, like we have to enjoy our life, you know
Exactly.
it's important. I think it's almost disrespectful to God to not. So but responsibilities come into play, and then that puts on a different hat. So it's toggling between that's where I'm at. you know Musically, I still
I
love
got you.
music or whatever, but the industry and the world, there's a lot of chaos and all that. And I'm trying to remain, uh, trying to harmonize with things, trying to contribute in meaningful ways, trying to stay focused, positive, and smart, hedging, trying to be ahead of things, trying to get, all of that. And so,
Being proactive, not reactive.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head with the headspace side of it. You have to have the right mindset and find the joy in your present, and that worry of where tomorrow is going to bring you holds you back and causes often, like you said, that anxiety that we don't need in our present day. But too many people get stuck, being worried of what's going to happen next. And going through a divorce, oh my gosh, there are so many things to worry about. But I get up, I enjoy the day, I enjoy my kids, I do what I can, and go to bed and at least knowing I did my best. And maybe it could have been better, but I did whatever I felt was my best. And then tomorrow I'll do better.
It's not choosing the future now, right? I don't know what is. I mean, that's really what it is. Consciously, you got to put on the right thinking cap. This takes us back to faith, what helped my mom through her life. That's where people lean on things that give them strength, in the moment now. That's the beauty of all of that sort of stuff. So
Well, and as a friend, I want to say to you, you reached out to me through a text after seeing something I had put out online or said, and because of the relationship, the connection and friendship we have, you knew I was off, and you took the time to reach out. And I have to tell you, that particular day, that made a major difference. And I try to do that myself for others. But I just wanted to let you know that meant a lot to me that day. And every day you mean a lot to me, but that day just stood out.
thanks. Well, I'm glad that happened that way, and that's really what it's all about. For any of the viewers, it's really that. And it could be as simple as a smile to somebody. You know what I'm saying? It's really, it's just some form of gesture between people, like I see
Exactly.
you, you know what I mean? And I hear you, I feel you, I understand you, I get it, you know. Um, that's
Mm.
what's going to help all of us endure these times to get through them and then beyond them. We're actually here, in my view, to get through these hard times for our metal, but I believe good times like we can't even imagine are on the horizon. Not bad, good. So that's what I aim for, and I get aggravated by things that try to mitigate that attitude. You know what I'm saying? So you turn on the news or turn on this or turn on that. That's designed to pull you down. And that technique, that's got to stop. And it will. It's like at its end point. So all of us just hang on a little longer, and every time you do a nice gesture for somebody else, that's the ultimate FU to that whole process of those who are trying to pull us down. And there are those trying to prevent that, you know. We're all dandelions coming up through the concrete. They keep trying to concrete us down, but the dandelion will still come through, or the blade of grass. It's like, and that's the analogy of doing something for others, you know. So I'm glad that it helped in some way, but it's really just a friend being a friend. That's really all that was. That's a friend being a friend. And would a friend do that for somebody they don't know? My parents did. They did that for me, right? They didn't know me, but we'll take this one, or here's one that's available, you know, whatever it is, but you get the idea.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a phenomenal way to end our session here today, with the direction of making sure that we're helping out our neighbor, our friends, and even those we don't know, because that little bit of a smile can make the whole difference in another person's day.
Especially a smile like yours.
Well, I love you, brother, and I really do appreciate you taking your time to me.
Hey, I'm honored to be on your podcast, and it's my pleasure. I'll talk to you anytime, on or off this camera. And my thanks to your listeners, your viewers, and it's been my honor and pleasure.
Well, thank you very much, Craig, and I'll definitely be following up with you.
Cool, appreciate that, Tim. All right, everybody, take care. Adios.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of Faithful Sinners with Timothy E. Baker, and don't forget to visit us at thefaithfulsinners.com.